So let me come back to the studio and speak with Malik Abbas Dabo, who is here with us. Raymond Akwa is also here, and Enimwa Enimado is also here with us. We're going to start by talking about digital terrestrial television. Malik, we have been following this issue for a few weeks now. Yes. And my joint line, of course, even before all of us started putting out those publications by Giba, response from the ministry. So I think it's fair that you take us to the story as we've seen it so far.
I think it's actually fair to say I have been following this for years. I've been following this as far back as 2013, 2014. So I understand the story quite well. I followed the story until the cancellation of the StarTimes contract that led to KNET being given the contract to execute this digital migration in accordance with the International Telecoms Union recommendation that all countries should migrate from analog television broadcasting to digital, which is the reason why we had to do what we did. I think Newsfile was quite interesting, and I came away from Newsfile with two things. That it would appear to me that government was at all costs determined to find some job for StarTimes to do.
No, Malik, you see, before we go into the details of what happened with Newsfile, let's, for the sake of listeners who may not have followed the story as we have, tell the story to last Saturday. So, as of last Saturday, what was the latest?
As of last Saturday, the latest was that government had entered into some agreement with StarTimes to do some expansion work on digital migration, which had been done by KNET. And what was done? KNET had done all of this, built all of these cell sites, created 40 channels for, that's digital television channels, 40 of them. The government argued, and we got information, that the government had entered into some agreement, and GIBA, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, was in disagreement with the Ministry of Communications, which GIBA believed had entered into all of these agreements with the Chinese company StarTimes to execute this and to allow StarTimes to play a role in the digital space in Ghana, digital television space in Ghana, which the GIBA didn't believe that was properly done. First of all, GIBA's first complaint was that there was no dialogue amongst all of the key stakeholders. And GIBA said that he had written letters to the Communications Ministry dating back to February this year, and those letters were not responded to. In the meantime, the ministry was engaged in all of these agreements with StarTimes. They signed a memorandum of understanding. There was a cabinet approval. According to letters that were read on this show, a contract was signed. Those were not comprehensively denied by the Communications Ministry.
Deputy at the time. Oh, we're speaking to the Deputy Minister at the time.
Yes, yeah. And you're talking about George Ander, who was in the studio here. When the letters were read, and you have to remember that initially he had kind of made us understand that no agreement had been reached and that these were discussions which the ministry was engaging with StarTimes and all the stakeholders. When the letters were read, that look, you have signed a memorandum of understanding already. Cabinet has given approval already. You have actually signed a contract, and that contract has been referred to in documents written, letters written by the ministry itself. And then he said, well, but these discussions have to be preceded by some level of understanding and approval at various levels. So if there's cabinet approval, he wouldn't be surprised. There's a memorandum of understanding, he wouldn't be surprised as well. He was uncertain whether a contract had been signed and that he would find out. But it was instructive that kind of vitiated from the earlier stance he had taken, that there was no concrete agreement reached between the Ministry of Communication and StarTimes and all of the other agencies involved in this matter. So that, for me, were the issues until Saturday when the minister appeared on Newsfile. Great.
So let's get some excerpts of what happened on Saturday. And on the panel were Suleiman Ibrahima, Media Foundation for West Africa. There was also Andrews Danso Ninkwa, President of GIBA, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. There was also Sam Jatta George, Member of Parliament for Nimgo Pram, member of the Communications Committee of Parliament, and And it's interesting, his expertise is needed on this because he's actually had experience working in the communications ministry on this particular digital migration project. And then there is, of course, Esther Ekufuor, Minister for Communications. You will also be hearing the voice of Samson Ladia Yenini. Good morning, Samson. I know he's hearing us. He's listening to us now. Host of News File. So this is what happened.
As much as it is in my power.
It's not evident.
So far, nobody has brought any issues before me which needs my intervention, either for the imposition of a tax waiver for any business that they are doing. Nobody has had any engagement with the ministry as to, unfortunately, the ministry isn't in a position to even intervene in many of these matters now because it no longer has supervisory authority over the Ministry of Information as it did previously. And so I'm only interested in the infrastructure which is being put in place, which is my mandate. As to the content and the way you do your business, the relevant ministry which has authority to assist you in that respect is the Ministry of Information. My business is the infrastructure, and I'll make sure that the most robust infrastructure is put in place. The company will be in charge of the middleware and the software and the management of the infrastructure. Neither KNET, who built the infrastructure, nor StarTimes, who may enhance the infrastructure, would have the duty of determining how that infrastructure is operated and how your businesses are engaged on that infrastructure. I have news for you. At that next meeting, we're going to discuss fees that you're going to be paying for being hosted or after being hosted on that platform for free for over 2 years. All these are issues that need to be discussed. But before we call that meeting, we need to have matters that will be discussed at that meeting finalized, which is the process we've been engaged on up to this point. So if you sit here and you say the ministry is giving sweetheart deals to Chinese companies, I have news for you. Ministry of Communications building. Yes, that was built by a Chinese company. And the company was paid 70% mobilization upfront. And its subcontractors bolted with the money. The building that we live in, which we have occupied for less than 2 years, is falling apart. And you are comfortable making allusions to that?
That's
so maybe this is why you should not be handing our DTT platform to a Chinese company.
Excuse me. I don't want to confuse issues here. Who is giving sweetheart deals to Chinese companies?
You are.
You did.
You are.
You did.
Signing a $95 million deal that we do.
Did I hear you say, when you announced that you have news for Geba, did I hear you say that the regime that we understood was to encourage these businesses for them to stay afloat, where they were to be hosted for free for a period?
They have been.
Okay, that you're going to review that, and that now they will have to pay.
They are all aware that they will have to pay at some stage.
Okay.
That platform has to be self-sustaining. It's not a charity.
Okay.
But Madam, you said you circulated the draft policy. The stakeholders have not received any draft policy.
Sorry.
We're coming to a meeting and we don't even have a copy of the policy document we are coming to discuss in 10 days' time.
Okay, thank you. There's a question that's being asked that the NCA, which is under your ministry, has been advertising to sell 3 lots of their 4G spectrum to raise money for the DTT project. Why do you need an Exim Bank, loan, facility to be able to undertake the process?
Unfortunately, KNET is still owed on the execution of the first phase of this project. We were supposed, the current arrangement is costing this government about over $100 million. We're only able to sell 1 block of spectrum for $67 million. That money is exhausted. In addition to paying KNET, we also had to pay legal fees out of that same money. We had to pay an independent engineer, which the previous government also contracted out of the same money. So the 67 million has been unable, it hasn't even paid half of what is owed to KNET. We need to get more money out of the sale of spectrum to complete the first phase of this project before we look for additional funding to look at expansion of the capacity of this project. I would have wished that Geba would have offered that our members would put up so much money to assist in this process.
Okay.
So far, you are making interventions for one lack of I won't even call it noise.
So that is Esther Ekufuor responding there to issues raised by Sam Jatta George, Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association, and the Media Foundation for West Africa. You also heard her answering questions that Samson Ladi Ayenini, host of Newsfile, put to her. Raymond, so what we know from the interaction that we had with Madam Ekufo on Saturday was that, first of all, a contract has been signed with Chinese company StarTimes. However, the loan agreement, which should be underpinned that contract, because it's that loan money we are going to use to do the digital expansion, that loan agreement has not been signed. And Esther Usu assures us that the interests of Ghanaians will be upheld. However, are we to take her word with a pinch of salt, considering the fact that this is communication that is so different from what that ministry itself has told us prior to Saturday?
There is something else happening in all of this. First and foremost, the ministry has been very shoddy in how it managed it from the beginning. And the attempt to save the situation has also not been very clean. Perhaps because underpinning all of this is not so much of a clean engagement in the first place. One, the inconsistencies in what George Anders says, his ministers say, and their statement actually puts out, makes it look like we didn't really prepare that we had to communicate this to the public. And so let's just say anything and hoping they will not understand, or probably they will not peruse further, or there is no contradicting information out there to make it reasonable. When faced with the facts, the response of the ministry has always been two. One, I will check and get back to you when you talk to about George Anda in the first place. Then on the second hand, you get them saying that, oh, yes, we have an agreement. We have a contract. A contract, yes, but it is predicated on so many other factors, so it's not being implemented yet. So you don't have any fears at all. So we have a contract that says we will engage StarTimes. That's done deal. But the terms, the detailed terms for engagement of StarTimes is dependent on some other master facility terms, which will determine whether or not we will protect the Ghanaian business space or we will leave it or hang it to dry. Now, what that tells any person is that it's either there's a deliberate attempt to hide more information and make it look like some of these are still inconclusive, so your questions being raised are way too early, they are premature. Wait, we'll get to the time. When we get there, we will still protect the interests of the people. Or on the other hand, it is that bad that the defense of it or putting entirely the details out there is going to do a lot of damage to the ministry. It's one of these. What it sounds to people then will be, what is the problem then? Why is it impossible that the people at the helm of affairs cannot just stipulate to us, this is what the agreement's about, this is how far we've gone with this, this is what the people of this republic stand to lose or gain from this, and this is what we are actually engaging the people on. Okay. Now, I also get a posture of the ministry that, okay, even though we are still engaging you, it's a done deal. Right. So we will discuss it next week. We will get to talk on some of the other details, but you can only talk post facto. And it will be relevant to the current agreement because we've already finished it. And this is so critical to government that it will do everything to push it through, including, and again, shelving the interest of the people who are creating jobs in the country. For people who are predominantly external, people who there's no evidence of them doing any wonderful work anywhere. There's no evidence, even here in Ghana, that they will do the kind of work that you want them to do. And of course, there was also the agreement or the quandary of whether or not, if the Chinese failed you in building your building, how are you convinced that they are going to give you a wonderful agreement?
which Esther Usu raised?
Yeah, no, it was actually the other people that raised it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the building.
In fact, her defense was that, previous government did a bad job. We are correcting some of these things and putting in the right position. I think that two things ought to be done. And there's a lot of transparency required around this. It's been dirty. It's been done in a rather shoddy and unconvincing manner so far. The ministry ought to step back, put itself together, tell the people of this republic the actual details, and not let us go around and make it look like...
But has that not been done by us knowing that at least there's a contract, there's a framework agreement, this is what we've signed?
Sorry, if you ask the minister, and I heard on several occasions, 3, 4, and even 5 times,
What is in that particular contract? The hesitation, the unwillingness to release that information. I mean, to be clear, it's not a secretive document. If the people who give you mandate, and of course, through the president, you, the person, has been appointed to represent the people of this republic, the people ask you for details. All that you get to tell them is that, and of course, the indication that she on several occasions was not willing to answer the question will send a signal to some people that you have something to hide, something dirty, something inappropriate, something that you are hiding, because it will do a lot of damage to you. And
Malik, that always brings up a light bulb in the mind of any journalist when there's a hesitation to answer a question.
Samson was compelled to now say, answer the question. He was not compelled to tell the gentleman interfering, because it was interference to what I thought first and foremost.
Yeah.
To tell the person to shut up, because it was a legitimate question which was consistently being avoided.
Okay.
What is the big deal?
Malik, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but let's listen a bit to this gentleman that Raymond is referring to, Sam Jatta George. He was also a guest on Newsfile. I've already mentioned that. Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram. He used to work at the Communications Ministry under the former government. Let's hear what he had to say.
I'll start from where you ended and then address all the issues. Because listening to the minister, I had a retching feeling in my stomach. Because I asked myself, is my minister who is paid with my taxes, is she speaking for me as a Ghanaian? Or is she protecting Chinese interests? And I'll explain why. If the government has a mandate, and the government thinks that the execution of this mandate is by offering sweetheart deals to China and Chinese entities, as against the spare parts dealer in Abosiokai, who gave the mandate in the first place to the government, who is suffering and reeling from overtaxation. The minister and myself are MPs. Our salaries are being slashed further thanks to an increased payee tax. Same as you, if you're a media broadcaster earning a certain level, or teachers and doctors. GIBA is reeling under the corporate tax regime. All of these people who gave the government the mandate, the minister says that they are really not that important. What is really important is being able to fulfill its promises by way of offering sweetheart deals. The minister says that she's heard a lot of noises. I've heard her deputy also use the same phrase. Madam Minister, when Ghanaians who have given you a mandate are raising issues with the modus operandi of your ministry, the least you can do is offer us a listening ear and not tell us we are making noises. That's most disrespectful. Secondly, when you say GIBA is fighting for the benefit of his members, who did you expect them to fight for? Spare parts dealers? No. They will fight for GIBA members. And who are GIBA members? GIBA members are Ghanaians. GIBA is not a foreign organization. GIBA is Ghanaian broadcasters. I don't know if you've done it, but the NDC minister who you mentioned, Dr. Maniboama, before rolling out the DTT platform, visited the studios of every GIBA member, and he understands their plights. He went to Chief Crystal's studio and saw that Chief Crystal had imported equipment for his own digital rollout. And government has said that equipment is going to go to waste because we are using a single platform. That is lost to him. So the NDC administration, he came to multimedia, saw your improvement in your infrastructure for digital rollout, which is going to waste. That is why the NDC administration, under Omani Boama said, and John Mahama, when we roll out the DTT platform, for the first year to 2 years, the GIBA members will be on the platform for free. Because we realized that they had put in their own cost. You may not have a full appreciation of what GIBA is going through. So you would say that GIBA is fighting for its members' benefits. Its members are Ghanaians who employ Ghanaians. You say the ministry has its own interest. And so where the ministry's interest and GIBA's interest align, then we can have a conversation. What is the ministry's interest? From this conversation, it is clear to me the ministry's interest is protecting Chinese business. Because you say to me,
if a few thousands of employees of these Ghanaian companies will have to be laid off as a result of the entrance of StarTimes, so that ordinary Ghanaians, a lot more, the greater interest, is that not what should be served?
Well, there's no guarantee of that.
There's no guarantee.
We're entering the realm of conjecture, something. And please let me just give you a reason why I said the minister has established on this platform what the ministry's interest is. We've established GIBA's interest is protecting Ghanaian jobs,
right,
and Ghanaian players in the broadcast space. The Ministry of Communications' interest under this administration and this dispensation clearly has been defined as being protecting foreign interest, and I'll explain why. The minister says that the termination of the contract was ill thought through against the advice of the then Chief of Staff, she's not adduced any evidence to that, and the Minister of Finance, she's not adduced evidence to that. Okay. I can put out a letter by the outgoing head of the China Exim Bank to the former minister, Dr. Omani Boama, thanking him for the cooperation. Because you see, StarTimes is not the only Chinese player in that sector. The ministry that the minister sits in, the building she sits in, was built by a Chinese company at the same time that this StarTimes contract was terminated. Top International. Okay. ZTE, another major player in the industry, is a Chinese player.
Huawei, so I need you guys to be very brief.
And let me tell you, the minister says that government, and that's why I say she doesn't speak for the Ghanaian interest. She's positioning herself and saying that government of Ghana must respect the sanctity of its contracts. Let me read the partial award by the International Commercial Court. This is what it says on page 38 of this ruling. Paragraph 144. For the reasons set out above, the tribunal awards and declares as follows. A. Clause 41.11 of the GCC is not subject to an obligation not to exercise the right of termination irrationally, capriciously, or for an improper purpose. B. Clause 41.11 of the GCC provides the respondent, that is the government of Ghana, with an absolute right to terminate the contract at any time and for any reason, subject to payment of any sums due under clause 41.1.3. This is what the International Commercial Court is saying. Yet our minister, who is supposed to be championing this, she gives me the chills because I see a repeat of the drill ship saga, where we are basically telling an international court that is ruling in Ghana's favor that the Ghanaian officials, elected officials, are saying that Ghana doesn't have a case. Look, let us just be clear about one thing. Yeah? When you say arbitration affects international relationships, it's not true. Ghana and Ivory Coast currently have a fantastic relationship, even though we want an arbitral case against them. This whole issue, and why I call it a sweetheart deal, madam, is that even though you sit here and say that you have not signed a contract and anything, a letter you wrote on the 22nd of June to your colleague minister, the Attorney General, spells out clearly how StarTimes got this contract.
And that was Sam Jata George there, speaking to Esla Osu Ekufo, Minister of Communications. Malik, I'm going to read a Facebook post by Aitazan Anochinana, Dr. Charles Rekubobe. That's his Facebook name. And he says, the Minister of Communications is speaking for the Chinese government, not the people of Ghana. Hashtag in our name. He adds an E there. Will the statements be fair to make, listening to what you've heard?
Daniel, I am at pains to agree with him, but if you disagree with him, but if you listened to the minister, she was at pains to stress the need to give StarTimes the work to do. That was pretty much clear. And she was surprisingly actually willing to say that GEBA has no basis and that, well, they may be interested in protecting their own interests. And that, but they cannot sit there. And I was surprised to hear the minister say that GEBA cannot sit there and dictate to the ministry how to do his work. I don't think anybody at GEBA contemplated dictating to the ministry. All that GEBA was saying is that protect our interests as well. But it was pretty much clear that in all of the arguments, she was backing the interests of StarTimes. And when you have a lawyer of Mrs. Eslosu's standing, you have a politician of her caliber at pains to defend a foreign company's interests and arguing that foreign company's cases in Ghana that were disposed of, that foreign company was ruled against by Ghana's courts, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, and that the government decided to settle with that foreign company, then there certainly is more than just law.
Are we not reducing this to StarTimes? Because on the other hand, for instance, the original digital terrestrial television migration project was done by KNet. But on the other hand, we are not saying that, okay, this is StarTimes versus KNet. We've made it look like it's StarTimes and StarTimes alone. Because the minister mentions how it's a matter of bilateral relations with the government of China. it's a matter of accessing a loan facility with Exim Bank, which is an institution much bigger than StarTimes in China.
Daniel, I did the story about StarTimes contract cancellation. And I know the pressure that I was brought under to pull down that story from Major Online. And if I may just read to you a paragraph in the letter that Dr. Omani Boama, communications minister at the time, wrote cancelling the contract. I quote, "All information, guarantees, and support agreements required to be provided by the Ministry of Communications to facilitate access to funding by StarTimes were duly provided to the China Exim Bank, who followed up with due diligence visits to the country." So the government of Ghana signs a contract with StarTimes to deliver this digital migration project. StarTimes was supposed to source funding from China Exim Bank. The government of Ghana provided all the necessary information to enable StarTimes to raise the funding. Yet StarTimes was unable to raise the funding. Therefore, the contract was cancelled. The contract was actually signed in 2012. It was not executed 2013, 2014. And I remember when I got information, and this is on the web, you can Google and find out, the Tanzanian government cancelling their contract for the same digital migration with StarTimes. And I raised an issue and I did the story out of that. I was told that, StarTimes will execute its contract in Ghana. Fast forward 2015, StarTimes was unable to execute the contract. The contract was cancelled, and then it was re-awarded to KNET, which then executed it. And to quote George Under, Deputy Communications Minister, KNET built a fantastic system for digital migration. Now, you hear the Communications Minister say the cancellation of the StarTimes contract threatened Ghana's diplomatic relations with China.
Isn't that what we should be looking at?
If the Chinese are willing to stand by their private company whose contract was cancelled in accordance with due process of law, that this contract was cancelled not because the ministry or the government of Ghana acted capriciously and illegally, but because they failed to execute a contract. And every contract has terms that allows a party to terminate it for want of execution. And this is the condition under which this contract was terminated. If in spite of that, on the face of it, the contract was cancelled because the company didn't deliver, why would the Chinese government have a problem with the government of Ghana and threaten our diplomatic relations because one company's contract was cancelled, and was cancelled because they didn't execute? Why? If the Chinese are willing to do that, why is our government finding ways of getting StarTimes a job to do, which it would seem is completely unnecessary and amorphous, because the same local company, which first of all generated the idea of how to raise funding for the contract. You were going to China Exim Bank to go and pick a loan of $95 or so million to do a job.
Okay.
You engage a local company that tells you that, look, you are sitting on a resource that you can use, you can sell this resource and use the money to execute the contract. You tap into it, got this local company to execute the contract. If you need expansion, you want to create redundancy and all of the lofty things that the communications minister spoke about on Newsfile, why don't you just engage the local company? But of course, we have to find something for the Chinese to do. You see, because we want to rebuild our relations, which is itself in doubt, that our relations with China are in jeopardy. And if that was the case, why can't our government say, look, we acted in accordance with due process? If you are unhappy with that, then you are the problem, not us.
Malik Abbas Dabo's thoughts there. So this conversation is not over because we still have to decipher this whole argument. You know, we are being made to understand, like I said, that this is not just about the DTT migration, it's also about our general relationship with China. So there's a 19 billion that we want to get out of the bauxite by, this bauxite for infrastructure deal that we are entering with Sino-Hydro. Also, interestingly, another agreement with the Chinese government that has a company attached to it. So it seems to be the modus operandi for the Chinese government when they are dealing with developing countries. My question is this how we are going to be dealing with Chinese going forward? Is this how are citizens comfortable with dealings like this with Chinese companies? And going forward, do we have any options, realistic options, if we want to develop as a country? That's the kind of conversation that we are having this morning. Of course, it will continue. Let it continue in your homes and your cars. Let's try and fashion those solutions that we really need. And send us a message when you have any ideas on 0244 340 437 0244 340 437. At Joy 997 FM is the Twitter handle, and Joy 99.7 FM is the name of our Facebook page. The hashtag is JoySMS. Is this just a China invasion that we are refusing to recognize, or our government is shortchanging its citizens? Answer us. Please, we finished our program at Trade Fair. We were doing a habitat fair at Providence Event Center. Good morning to all of our listeners who are sending us questions. Now, the Ghana Revenue Authority GRA wishes to inform the general public, particularly manufacturers, importers, wholesalers and retailers, of the following excisable products at a full nationwide enforcement and compliance exercise on the affixing of excise tax stamp will begin Monday, 24 September 2018. This is today. The products are cigarettes and other tobacco products, alcoholic beverages, whether bottled, canned, contained in kegs for sale or packaged in any form, non-alcoholic carbonated beverages, whether bottled, canned, contained in kegs for sale in packaged or packaged in any other form, and bottled water, or any other excisable product prescribed by the Minister of Finance. The exercise will involve the detention and seizure of affected goods not affixed with the excise tax stamp and the imposition of a penalty of 300% of the duties and taxes involved, in accordance with the Excise Tax Stamp 2013 Act 873. The public should please take note. Now, the U.S. Ghana Chamber of Commerce presents the Global Women's Professional and Business Exchange Conference on Saturday, October 6th at Kempinski Hotel. Highly accomplished global women would connect with their Ghanaian counterparts for professional and business partnerships, global business and career and advancement opportunities, mentoring and coaching, and sharpen networking skills. Take your career and business to the next level and join us at the GWX conference. Call us on 0544 326 394 or 0507 268 169 or visit globalwomanx.org. See you at the GWX conference on Saturday, October 6th at Kempinski Hotel. The time is 9 a.m. prompt. Tickets are available at the front desk of Joy FM. Keep moving forward together. 90 minutes to the top of the hour here on the Super Morning Show. Enjoy 99.7 FM. When we will take these important messages, when we come back, we'll continue with the conversation on the DTT migration, and also some of the thoughts that were shared by Auditor General Daniel Domelevo as that lecture he delivered on Thursday. Take a listen to this.
Good. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to corruption, I have a suggestion for this country. I have spoken about the Office of the Special Prosecutor, which is more or less decentralizing the prosecution of corruption, which I really support. But I think that is not enough. My suggestion is that we should commercialize the prosecution of corruption in this country.